When I was a young man building my first Warhammer army, I decided to paint my Space Marines in potentially the worst colour scheme that you could ever imagine. Here are my personal chapter, the Myrmidons, half yellow, half purple, all awful. Now, as an old man, I've decided to repaint most of this army and have decided on the Black Templars. One thing I didn't account for when building all these is that they can't have certain units, like librarians, because they are sick of the psychic shenanigans that they provide. So I've started to convert this Terminator Librarian up already, but it's broken and I thought this would be a great base for something like a Dark Apostle. So after separating it from its base, I remembered that the model is push fit, which means all the parts are attached by pegs, and I didn't use any glue, so I can separate this quite easily. Some bits need a little bit more finesse, like the head needs a little bit of wiggle room, as you can see here, and I decided to chop the arm off with a saw, and that left me with a really solid base for converting up. So after rifling through my sprues, I found some suitable bits like this Praetor chest piece. This is a great start as it will really define the model and make it look super ornate, and it just needs a little bit of sanding and a little bit of snipping to make it fit nice and easily. This chosen head is suitably demonic and intimidating, and I think it will be perfect for the Dark Apostle. I needed to remove the ball bearing bit at the bottom as the Terminators have a flat plane, as you can see here, and with a bit of glue it fits perfectly, and that means I can then enclose it with the back piece and the front piece that we made earlier, like this. It's a great start, and I want to add a little bit more detail with this belt buckle, so after a bit of smoothing, it fits perfectly, but I needed to then fill that hole in his chest. So I used a bit of green stuff and really made a super simple shape. Nothing too fancy. I wanted to keep it simple as there's a lot of detail going on. I thought I'd repurpose this Terminator arm from a previous kitbash that didn't work out with the mace from the chosen kit. I chopped down the arm as best as I could with a knife in several stages to make it as clean as possible until I was left with the hand and the mace itself. It was a bit of a faff to get this exactly how I wanted it, but after some careful sanding and cutting, I could glue it straight onto the model's arm, and it's already taking shape. I'm already really pleased. So I attached the cape back on as well and started to work on the right arm. I thought maybe a gun or another weapon would be suitable, but then I found this hand holding this magical flame, and I knew that would be exactly what I want for a Dark Apostle, so I attached it straight on, and it looks great. I used the old Terminator shoulder pads as they look quite word-beary and ornate, except for the big Crux Terminatus on this one here. This demonic head is from, I think, the AOS chosen kit, and I think it would look perfect, so after some more cutting and some more sanding, this fits really nicely on. When dry, I could attach these straight back onto the model, easy peasy. I could see this wasn't super flush against the shoulder pad, so I actually went back in and resanded this and reattached it at a later point. Before that though, I moved on to the back banner, which is a piece from the Demon Prince kit. Normally he's got two of these adorning his back as trophy racks, and I think one of these is just ridiculous enough to fit on the back of a Terminator here. I wanted to add two more bits of detail here, and I realised the little skulls would work perfectly, so I added those and attached them back onto the base. There was a gap between the cape and the armour, which I filled with some chain. This fit really well because not only does it look cool, it also fits thematically with the belt buckle, which has the chains hanging off it already. I added this little necklace thing because why not? I then used my super secret source of Tamiya extra thin tape and started to wrap this around the leg where the purity seals are to kind of cover them, but also to look as some kind of like scroll work or parchment paper with incantations of the dark gods on it. Skin pins are tiny little nails that I use to make little spikes in the model. All you need to do is snip the end off, drill a hole in, add some glue and stick it in. Dead easy, looks great, name's ridiculous though. The front looks great, but the cape was a little bit too neat, so I used my knife to gouge some holes and make it a little less uniform. I got my material that I used to make banners, here's a link on how to do it here, and I cut them into really long thin sheets to make some kind of like parchments that I can stick onto the model. This was, surprisingly, really difficult to drill into. You can see here I'm really struggling with it moving around and the tweezers being a bit finicky. Even then, I think I had some green stuff or something on the tweezers, which I obviously removed, but with a bit of super glue afterwards, I attached them onto the spikes, and what's really good about this material is that it holds its form really well, so you can make these long flowing kind of tabards or banners and then seal it all with some PVA glue afterwards. I then based the model with some polyfiller and sand, and after sealing it with PVA glue, it's ready to go. Been a few weeks since I've actually created him, and now I'm looking back over him, there's something that I can't quite put my finger on it, and I think it's his pose. The angle which he's holding the flame is a little bit too acute, and I want it to be a little bit more open, and I and I think I'm going to have to not go back to the drawing board, but do a little bit of modifications to make him exactly what I want.
It turned out it was as simple as finding another Terminator arm, which is a little bit more open, putting the hand and shoulder pad on, and I was much happier with this end result here. I wanted to add a single finishing touch, which was a kind of like chaosy star. I found this in my bits box, cut it down to size and fit it on. I undercoated the model with Raven Black from Colourforge and started to build up some of the colour with Scorched Earth from Tooth and Coats. I really wanted to try experimenting with some sponging, which I see is all the rage at the minute, and I don't really have much experience in. I wanted to build up to that iconic Wordbearer's red subtly, so started mixing in some browns and reds together and build up that colour again really smoothly and neatly. I did this by adding in more red and then went straight to red without cleaning the sponge, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. I think it's a nice alternative to an airbrush if you don't really want to break that out. I turned the red into a glaze consistency and started to apply that onto some of the parts of the model to really bump up that colour subtly again. I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do at hand, I just kind of went for it. I wanted to try a load of different techniques and paints that I hadn't really used previously, and I didn't want to go rooting through all of my paints to find, the ideal ones. I just wanted to get the model done with what I had to hand. I've had a box of the Tooth and Coats paints on my painting desk forever, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to try them out. They're really smooth, they look really great, they're really vibrant, and really, again, I just wanted to get this model painted. Too often do I end up half painting the model or looking at it halfway through and realising, actually, I'm not super happy with it, when in reality it just needs to be finished. So I powered through, painting the small details like the cape and some of the metals, and just really wanted to just break through that ceiling of having it sit there forever. The face was actually quite tricky to paint because you can see it's really tucked in there, but I built up the colour with some purples and some darker skin tones up into some really pale ones to create that kind of sickly visage. For laurels, parchments, what have you, I always like Rakarth Flesh. I think it's one of my favourite paints. It's quite a boring paint, but also does everything really well. I then added some yellows and some sharp highlights to give that feel of like worn, dried paper and parchment. I decided to flex with some freehand. Again, I'm not great, but I took my sweet time with a small brush and some Black Templar contrast paint. It just runs off the brush super smoothly, allowing you to do really fine needlework. Next, I moved on to the bronze, which is one of my favourite colours, but I absolutely am awful at painting it. I decided on this kind of mid-tone bronze. It wasn't too dark, it wasn't too light, and it worked really well over that kind of reddy brown base coat that I already applied. I built up this colour with several layers until it was perfect, and then did some highlighting with, I think it's called Brassy Brass, which I love the name of. I added some blue and green washes into the mix, and then re-highlighted up to a really bright silver. For the silvers, I wanted a really battle-worn appearance, so did a quick dry brush of some lead belcher over the brown, washed with some wildwood contrast, which is a really nice dark brown, and when it was all dry, I added some Fanatic Orange from Tooth and Coats, as it's really vibrant, works a treat, and then resealed that in with some more dry brushing. I don't want to spend too much time on the small details, so I normally ended up just doing a single coat of paint and a little highlighter or wash. That's things like the black trim, the skulls that you can see here, the heads, any of the gems or the book or the leather, those kind of little details that I didn't really want to add too much attention to. I built up that yellow tone by starting with a white star base coat and then going over it successively with yellows and oranges up to red, and then finishing it off with us tapping some Black Templar on the top. The Dark Apostle is pretty much painted and done. I just need to do the base, and I settled on a purple tone as it reminded me of Space Marine 2. I normally do kind of like an Armageddon where it's like a rusty orange or a brown, but wanted to push the boat out with some vibrant colours like this pink ink, which I've been dying to use for a while. I didn't think it would be right to paint the Terminator head on the base as anything but a Black Templar, so whipped that up really quickly. I thought, finally I've finished the model, it's looking great, and then turned him over and realised I didn't paint the shoulder pads, and I don't have any Wordbearer's transfers. I decided to take the plunge and do a bit of freehanding. I built up that kind of red-orange by sponging on some orange and yellow, then doing some simple shapes and building up that kind of weird demonic skull face, adding some white in, neatening it up, and adding in the lines to create the flame effects afterwards. With that final step done, it's time to take him off his handle, paint the rim of the base black, and beseech the dark gods.
So I'm super happy with this guy. Not only have I repurposed a model which I couldn't really use in my current army, but the vision has come together so neatly. I am so pleased with how he's turned out, but also I'm just glad he's done, because there's so many models I've got behind me which are in a state of either, you know, disrepair, they need fixing, or they just need painting at whatever stage that could be. Couple that with filming my first video as well. I look at some of the painters and people out there already, and they're incredible, and then, you know, to start from fresh, it's quite tricky. But all in all, I'm glad I've done him. I think there's so many things I've learned on the way, even not about miniature painting, about, you know, filming and editing. Hopefully they'll come through in the future, because the amount of stuff that has been out of focus or shot poorly in this video is astronomical. So if you've watched this far, thank you very much, and hopefully you'll be able to follow my journey as I improve on the video aspect and the modeling aspect, and just make some really cool stuff, because really at the end of the day, that's all I want to do. I want to make some cool stuff, show you what I've done and what you could potentially do, and hopefully just build something amazing. So thank you very much for watching. Take care. I've been Super Loads of Painting. Bye.